Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I have in my hands a vintage Bulova Accutron 218 from 1973, fresh off the eBay. I have no idea what's wrong with it, and as you'll soon see, it's unlike any watch I've ever featured on the channel. What's so special about this one? Well, this will be my first battery-powered movement, and my first Accutron. You'll see me fumble my way through this repair in spectacular fashion. This is far from my most elegant performance, but I kept all the mistakes in for the benefit of anyone else that may be interested in taking on such a repair. Introduced in 1960, before quartz movements were even available, Accutron movements were unique in their design, featuring electronic circuitry, a tuning fork, and an indexing mechanism. This bizarre but revolutionary invention by Bulova works as a simple oscillator which drives the gear train by way of an index. This is completely backwards from a traditional mechanical movement where the gear train, powered by the energy of a mainspring, is what drives the balance wheel oscillator. Before I do anything, let me just put a fresh battery in to see if anything happens. I don't think there's an on-off switch. It should just run, I think. The time and date appear to set just fine. Mike from My Retro Watches encouraged me to give this a try, and was nice enough to provide me with the service manual, which, in combination with his video series on the Accutron, I felt confident enough to dive in. The movement is placed in setting mode before the stem is removed. This disengages the motion works from the gear train, so the hands are safe to touch without damaging the indexing mechanism. Accutron watches offered superior accuracy compared to mechanical watches of their day due to their reduced susceptibility to friction, temperature changes, and positional errors. The two coils you see here each contain 8,100 turns of incredibly fine copper wire. The index mechanism in the movement converts the tuning fork's vibrations into rotary motion, making it a remarkable engineering achievement for its time. There are two dial foot screws located on the outer edge of the movement. At the heart of the Accutron sits these two collets with tines attached. The one on the left holds the pawl jewel, which ratchets against the index wheel it rests against, and the one on the right holds the index jewel. The index jewel is what vibrates and moves the index wheel, thus turning the gear train. Under close magnification, you can see how tiny these parts are. Quite an engineering feat to produce such parts beginning in the 60s. The index wheel, index, and pawl jewels are incredibly small and delicate components that require careful handling during servicing. The index wheel the jewels are sitting against has 320 ratchet teeth, which are extremely difficult to see even under magnification. Each tooth is only 0.01 millimeters tall and 0.02 millimeters wide. The collets are twisted slightly to move the delicate pawl and index jewels away from the gear train prior to disassembly to avoid damaging them. The battery cell strap is removed. Brass tweezers are nice to have for this type of job, as most screws and other steel parts in the movement are magnetized. The train bridge is uninstalled to reveal the train of wheels. The fourth wheel, second wheel, and third wheel are carefully removed. They are smaller than most wheels I've ever handled on mechanical watches, and these aren't my favorite tweezers either. The index wheel is incredibly delicate. Grabbing it at the rim would destroy the microscopic teeth, so I've opted to play it safe and pull it out with the tip of the Rodico. Each tooth is 1/100th of a millimeter tall. The pawl bridge is removed next by removing its screws and carefully sliding it free from the cam screw. I'm trying my best to avoid having the tine and jewel jam against anything during removal. I did okay despite being all thumbs with these tweezers. Next, the tuning fork is removed, which will bring with it the cell coil and component coil. It seems the coil is loosely attached to the tuning fork, so I'm expecting this to come apart in pieces. There are two spacers of unique heights that fit around these posts. One of them was lifted away already with the tuning fork. They're colored differently to help remember which goes where. The hack lever spring and hack lever are now removed, followed by the sweep seconds friction spring. As always, my trusty Rodico is the unsung MVP of the workshop. With the stem removed, I can lift out the date corrector and sliding clutch, and I'll finish off this side with the removal of the ground plate, with the magnetized screws adding to the fun. On to the dial side, where I will start disassembling the calendar works. The day indicator detent and its associated spring are removed, along with the day wheel. That's the sound I make when I get hit in the mouth with a screw. The date bridge was under some kind of spring tension, and fortunately nothing was lost. This date indicator detent spring may have been the culprit, and now the date wheel can be removed with the date indicator detent. The arrow wheel is lifted away, providing access to this beefy date trip spring. With it no longer under spring pressure, the calendar trip arm can be removed along with the date trip wheel. The fourth wheel bridge is uninstalled for cleaning. Next, I remove the setting lever spring, minute wheel, setting gear, and center wheel assembly. The yoke spring and yoke are carefully uninstalled, and the setting lever is lifted away. Finally, the date corrector detent is uninstalled. Most non-electric components are cleaned per usual as shown here, except for the tuning fork and pawl bridge. Those are dipped in benzene and left out to air dry. Reassembly starts with the setting lever and its screw, the hole for which is lubricated with D5. The screw inserts from the opposite side of the plate. Next, the date corrector detent is installed. A bit of D5 is used on the high friction surfaces of the keyless works. And you're about to witness mistake number 1. Upon fitting the yoke, I failed to correctly orient its tip relative to the setting lever. The setting gear is placed on its post, and then I'll reinstall the yoke spring. The center wheel receives a touch of DX grease before being placed over its post. D5 lubricates the hole where the minute wheel pivot is lowered into. Finally, the setting lever spring is put into place. I still fail to realize the incorrect placement of the yoke. DX grease is used where the setting lever post slides against the spring. The fourth wheel bridge is now installed. Some D5 lubricates the hole where the date trip wheel is lowered into. The calendar trip arm is installed, and here is mistake number 2. I failed to follow the service manual, which requires me to grease specific places along this arm. I will later learn this the hard way. Now for this monster of a spring. Nobody breathe. The arrow wheel is now installed, followed by the date indicator detent and the date ring. Reviewing this now, I don't even think the arrow wheel is seated properly. I'm really putting the amateur in amateur watch repair, aren't I? I wouldn't blame the Accutron's design for any of the little troubles I had during this repair. With this being the first one I am fully rebuilding, I lacked the confidence I would normally have, and that combined with trying to use a pair of brass tweezers that probably weren't the best, really affected me in how I physically tackled each step. With the date bridge installed, I can now insert the date indicator detent spring through this little window. And now the day ring is lowered into place. I lubricate the day indicator detent post with some D5 before the detent is installed. The day indicator detent spring is now reinstalled. Finally, the dial washer and day bridge are installed. Am I done? Nope, I have to do it again. While reinstalling the day bridge, the day indicator detent somehow slipped underneath the day ring. As I was saying before, my mindset and confidence plays a huge role in the repair. If in the right state of mind, I'm more likely to notice issues sooner. Clearly this movement is intimidating me. I think I got it now, but none of it matters because I had to remove the entire calendar works to correct my first mistake with the yoke, which should sit more towards the center of the movement. I'll spare you the calendar works reassembly. Just imagine me doing it a lot less awkwardly than the first couple of times. With the calendar works back together, I'll install the sliding clutch, date corrector, and stem to test the date correction and time setting modes. DX grease is applied to the stem before it is inserted. Reassembly continues with the ground plate. The center wheel friction spring is reinstalled. A little bit of D5 is applied to the post before the hacking lever is lowered down. DX grease is placed on the surface of the hacking lever plate where the tip of the stem makes contact with it. The hacking lever spring is fitted onto the plate. And now the tuning fork spacers are placed in the same locations as they were originally. The tuning fork is now being reinstalled, taking care not to damage the indexing tine and jewel that's attached. With the tuning fork sitting loosely on the plate, I can slide on the two coils before screwing all the components down. A touch of D5 lubricates the hole where the pawl bridge cam will fit into. And now the pawl bridge is carefully slid into the cam. The position of the cam may need some fine tuning to bring the movement into regulation once running. All the train wheel jewels are lubricated with Mobius 9010. I really should use an automatic oiler for this, but I still don't own one. I continued to be outbid on eBay and I refused to pay full price for one. However, shortly after this video was shot, I happened to win an auction and receive my version 1A oiler, and I must say it's a game changer. The third wheel is now installed. Notice how the stem drives the hacking lever to function as a brake against the base of this wheel. The index wheel is held only by the pinion to avoid damaging the delicate teeth. Finally, the fourth and second wheels are placed in their respective positions. The train wheel bridge is carefully lowered, and now comes the joy of seating all four pivots.
1 hour later.
With the pivot seated, the plate can be screwed down, taking note of the different sized screws. I am choosing to complete the dial side work now, while the index and pawl tines are still moved away from the index wheel. This eliminates the opportunity of damaging them. I will invoke the day and date changeover before seating the hands at midnight. I'm getting really good at pulling apart the calendar works. Now to correct the mistake of not greasing the calendar trip assembly. Maybe that was the root cause, maybe not. So now you can see in the upper right how the trip wheel moves around and eventually its finger actuates the trip arm to change the date. The trip was only traveling part way prior to this latest teardown of the works. The two dial foot screws are tightened before proceeding with the installation of the hands. The cell strap is now reinstalled in preparation for the battery. I want to get the movement in the case before I start messing around with the index, but first a little cleanup needs to be done. I don't plan on polishing it since it's in reasonable vintage condition, and it's gold plated after all. Polywatch is a great product for buffing out light scuffs and scratches from acrylic crystals. A quick dip in the ultrasonic with some jewelry cleaner is all that's needed to rinse the grime away. Again, I probably didn't need to do this, but out of an abundance of caution, I will case the movement now because I just want to eliminate the possibility of touching the hands on accident with either of the jewels against the index wheel. This is a good sign. The tuning fork has been vibrating away at 320 Hz since installing the battery. With the movement cased, I can now move the index and pawl jewels against the wheel. At this point, I have the movement in run mode, meaning the crown is pushed in and the hacking lever has allowed the pawl jewel to rest against the index wheel. The index jewel is vibrating as it's directly connected to the tuning fork. I'll work to turn this closer until it touches the wheel and begins driving the train. The tuning fork vibration causes the index to push the index wheel 320 times per second, resulting in the buttery smooth second hand motion that is a key characteristic of these watches. Compare that to 5 times per second of other mechanical watches of that era. Tuning fork watches are easier to repair and adjust than balanced wheel watches as they have fewer adjustments to make, primarily related to the index mechanism. For coarse-grained regulation, the pawl cam can be rotated to control the placement of the index jewel on the wheel. This affects timekeeping by multiple minutes per day. Once the watch is running to within 28 seconds per day, fine-grained regulation is achieved by rotating these regulators located on the edges of the fork. When fully regulated, the watch will be accurate to within 2 seconds per day. Now it's time to get it back together. I'm more of a mechanical watch guy, but I will be adding this one to the small collection I do have and will be proud to wear it like any of the others. I think the introduction of the Accutron is an important milestone to celebrate in watchmaking history, but let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. So I made a few mistakes today, but fortunately it only cost me my time. I hope you learned something from this video today, and if not, I hope you at least found it enjoyable. Thanks for fixing watches with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.